It is another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of April 2nd, 2004, and a good assortment of movies this week, ranging from your superhero movies, to your animated fare, to your romantic comedies, to just straight-up screwball comedy, and whatever the hell... Okay, an action movie. I forgot what the last one was, but let's go ahead and start off with the superhero movie, and that is Ron Perlman starring in Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Hellboy. As the trailer indicates, the film stars a charismatic demon-turned-investigator named Hellboy, played brilliantly by Ron Perlman, who works with the secretive Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, aka the BPRD, to suppress paranormal threats, but a resurrected sorcerer seems to make Hellboy fulfill his destiny by triggering the apocalypse, and nobody does it like Ron Perlman, man. They have tried their damnedest to try to reboot this series. David Harbour, who honestly isn't a bad choice, but just wasn't a bad movie altogether in 2019. They have a new reboot coming out, and I've only seen like little bits and pieces of like the trailer. But yeah, everything I've heard about that one is not very good. But Ron Perlman, man, he cements this role, and it helps that you have a director like Guillermo del Toro who knows what he's doing. Knew what he was doing with Blade 2, and of course he's gone on to become one of our great directors. And he shows why he was perfect for this. I mean, the world they create here is incredible. Some say that Hellboy himself looks kind of rubbery at times, but you know what? Compared to what we have with the reboots, you got to look at the makeup on Hellboy in this and think, you know, this is definitely much better than what we have nowadays. I mean, this is just a great, fun action movie. You got Selma Blair, Jeffrey Tambor, Rupert Evans, John Hurt, David Hyde Pierce. Just a fun concept overall here. Really fun action all the way through. I don't think I really need to say too much more about this one, as it already been said already. It's an incredible, fun film. Ron Perlman just makes this role his own, and just like every time he's on screen, you can't help but have a good time whenever he's on screen. He just has that charisma, he has that charm to him. He really does seem like a genuinely nice guy. I've seen him at Steel City Cons a couple of years ago, and he really does seem like a genuinely cool guy in general. So I've got nothing bad to say about him, honestly. He's been in a lot of roles where he's played the villains and all that, but you know what? Dude has a lot of charisma, and that he makes these roles work as well as he could do. And here, this is just pitch perfect casting. It's the thing that is the glue that holds the movie together. It's just a fun film. What a good time! I can't recommend this one enough. Hellboy. So let's move on to our next movie, and that is Dwayne Johnson trying to follow up on the success of The Rundown with a remake of the 1970s classic Walking Tall. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen, you have kind of a plot that's very reminiscent of something like First Blood, except Dwayne Johnson isn't as crazy as Sylvester Stallone was in that movie. Not even crazy, like he hasn't been through PTSD as much as Sylvester Stallone was in First Blood. That's what I was trying to say. But this is a remake of the 1973 film of the same name. The film revolves around a discharged U.S. Army soldier, played by Dwayne Johnson, who returns to his hometown only to become the town sheriff when he finds out that the town is laced with heinous crime and corruption. And the person at the forefront of this is Neil McDonough. And you also have Kristen Wilson from the Dr. Doolittle movies, Ashley Scott, Johnny Knoxville, Kevin Durand. Kobe Smulders is in here in a pre-How I Met Your Mother role. Just some good casting overall here, and a decent director. This is Kevin Gray, who gave us All About the Benjamins, which was actually which is a film that probably should have been a whole lot better than it was, but really was not. And this is a film that just feels like the pieces are definitely there. Dwayne Johnson does show a lot of charisma in this movie, but man, the rest of the movie itself is your pretty substandard, generic stuff. I mean, it's a movie that, first of all, it's a PG-13 movie. Like, the original was rated R, I believe. And anytime you try to remake an R-rated movie into a PG-13 movie so it's safe and marketable, it's very rarely works out. There's been a couple of exceptions, and certainly we're going to get to a couple of them in the next couple of years. Stuff like The Longest Yard, just to name a few, but just to name one of them. But, yeah, trying to make this a PG-13 family movie so that you can bring the kids along for the ride, I think it really hurts the film in the long run. It's a movie that really does not have a whole lot there in terms of a story. The characters are pretty bland and generic, and the acting by Dwayne Johnson is good, but it's not good enough to save the movie in general. It just feels like it feels like a movie that just really almost had the pieces there together. Just need a better screenplay to make it work, and more of an ability to just go all in, go for the rated R. You know, let's see what The Rock can do with an R-rated movie, and unfortunately, we'll see that in next year's Doom, which not a good sign altogether. But this Rock's pretty good in it, but it's not enough to carry the film over. So let's go ahead and get into some more disappointments. And oh boy, this probably is the biggest disappointment, not just of the year, but one of the biggest disappointments in Disney history. You thought Wish was one of the worst movies Disney ever made. Let me tell you about a little movie called Home on the Range. Okay. Yeah. That was terrible. That was the trailer, by the way. That was not the movie itself, but the movie is even worse. You know, whenever I hear people say that Disney has been on a downward spiral, you know, the last year movies they've made have been absolutely horrible. You were there when Home on the Range came out. This was a movie that, you know, this was a film that had so much anticipation towards it. And because Disney was still seen as a profitable company that could still make these animated movies without any hesitations whatsoever. And this was the film that literally broke the camel's back. And set the studio back to, not just the studio back, but 2D animation was pretty much dead at this point. This is like the equivalent of the Tomorrow Show back in the 70s, when Tom Snyder said that if you're blown, it's because there's a episode of the Tomorrow Show where Tom Snyder has a band on there that decides to blow up their car during their performance, and he talks to I think Johnny Carson about it, and Tom Snyder's just like, when we're starting to blow up cars, this sucker is over. This was like the last couple of years of the Tomorrow Show before David Letterman eventually took over the late night times out there. But imagine that, but for 2D animation. That's Home on the Range. Like, when you saw this movie, you just had to think to yourself, this is over, man. This is game over, man. Game over. And 2D animation was already in a bad place, but this is the straw that broke the camel's back. You've got a story here set in the Old West, centering around a mismatched trio of dairy cows, which, by the way, don't even get top billing in their own movie, by the way, from that trailer. It's just like, yeah, we got Roseanne Barr, Judi Dench, and Jennifer Tilly as these cows here, but you know what? We need to put the emphasis on Cuba Gooding Jr. as Buck, and also Rico, who's also the bad guy, part of the bad guy in this. But anyway, I digress. The three cows are Bresh, Adventurous Maggie, played by Roseanne Barr. Roseanne Barr is a cow, get it? That's not really all that funny. Prim, proper Mrs. Calloway, Judi Dench, because, you know, she's played by a British actress, Judi Dench. And Ditzy Happy-Go-Lucky Grace, played by Jennifer Tilly, because Jennifer Tilly was seen as ditzy and happy-go-lucky when she's really one of the smartest people you probably know, especially when it comes to poker. But I digress. The three cows must capture an infamous cattle rustler named Alameda Slim, played by Randy Quaid, for his bounty in order to save their idyllic farm from foreclosure. Aiding them in the quest is Lucky Jack, a feisty peg-leg rabbit, but a selfish horse named Buck, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., eagerly works in the services of Rico, a famous bounty hunter, who I just told you was part of the bad guy's plan, seeks the glory for himself. And this film was... Okay, I get that little kids will enjoy this, but as I've always said, little kids will enjoy anything you put in front of them because they're little kids. They don't know any better. You could sit them in front of Despicable Me 4 this weekend in theaters, and they would still love that, even though at my screening, this movie was, that movie didn't have the laughs in that one, but, like, I would have, like, when I wrote my original review for this on the website, I literally said I almost wanted to punch a mother who took her kids to that terrible 9 Lives movie that came out in the summer of 2016, because that was when around that movie came out. But I was an asshole back then. I'd still, you know what? I probably would still say the same thing nowadays, because it's just like, if you're taking your kid to 9 Lives, that terrible Barry Sonnenfeld movie, that's not even a Barry Sonnenfeld film you expect, with Kevin Spacey as a talking cat, then you don't deserve to have children whatsoever. People who take these kids to these stupid movies like this are just creating troubling kids in the future. Those social media influencers that we have out there now who, you know, were never told no in their life, were too spoiled and too entitled. That's what we're creating with movies like this. I mean, this is just creating troubling kids in the future because you refuse to show them something that's not that's not insulting their intelligence like that movie. And this movie is just as lousy too. This is a terrible movie. I mean, the animation is fine, I guess, but it's not spectacular in any way compared to other Disney movies. The characters are pretty stock. There's, like I said, they're just generic characters because of who's cast in them. You know, Roseanne Barr is a cow. Judi Dench is prim and proper cow. Jennifer Tilly is the ditzy cow. There are no clever jokes. You just saw in the trailer. There's references to Batman, the '89 Batman, The Matrix. You know, there's jokes like there's no, they're real. Quit staring at them. Like there's no clever jokes in this movie. This movie is fucking horrible. It's pretty bland and forgettable. The cliches are all over the place. The music, a lot of it done by Alan Menken, is mediocre at best. Like it's not. And like I said, it wasn't helping that this movie was at the point where the CG animated boom was beginning to take form, and we're nearly 6 weeks away from Shrek 2 just slamming the door shut and 2D animation becoming these box office wonders. We've talked about it with Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas of DreamWorks, Disney's Atlantis, Treasure Planet, Brother Bear. You get these few little successes here and there with Lilo and Stitch, and even later in the year we'll have the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. But the 2D animation genre was considered dead and buried, and CG animated films were becoming the new norm. And it's now become a rarity to see a 2D animated feature film, except for, you know, Princess and the Frog and Winnie the Pooh, which were great movies. I mean, not as much as we had gotten beforehand, but they were still great movies. And seeing 2D on the big screen is always going to be something that I'll always be there for. And much like the other Disney animated films in the early 2000s, this was taking way too much money to produce. Like, where did $110 million go? That's how much this movie cost. Like, I don't get it. Where did all that money go? I mean, Brother Bear didn't cost that much. Brother Bear looks like a much better movie, too, in terms of the animation, the storytelling, the characters. Like, that was a movie that looks a whole lot better than this, and that was around $60 million. There's like, where did the money for this go? Like, honestly, it's just like, it's baffling how this movie just completely just ruined Disney as a whole at one point. But it was the unfortunate death of Disney's long-lasting 2D animated second renaissance that began 15 years prior with The Little Mermaid, and this was the one that broke the camp, that ended it all, because, you know, and Disney had to say, hey, we've either got to advance or just continue to falter, and so they had to make the switch over to CG animated films to see if they could find success on their own in the new era of CG animation, especially when you consider that Pixar, who would produce the better Disney animated movie that we'll get to later in the year, was about to end their contract with Disney. You know, Michael Eisner was in the final years of his contract as the head of Disney, and his second half of his tenure was definitely much lesser than his first half of his tenure. And the fact that he couldn't repair the relationship between Pixar around this time was one of the many things that made people inside the Disney organization say that maybe it's time for Michael Eisner to go. But, you know, we'll get to that. We'll get to more about the potential of losing a Pixar later on in the year, but, like, they had to wait and see what happens with their first attempt at a CG animated film, and I'm just going to tell you right now, it didn't help. It didn't help them going out on their own, but it did eventually work out in their favor after it was all said and done. But we'll get to that in November of 2005. But yeah, bottom line, Home on the Range is just a bad film. Just a poorly put together movie, lazy animation, bad characters, bad comedy, bad storytelling, mediocre music, just an abysmal film, which literally was the end of the road for Disney's golden streak of films they had during the Renaissance, during that second Renaissance, and they were kind of stuck in a lull between 2005 and then eventually when the big changeover happened after their next movie came out. But again, we will get to that one a little bit later on. But that is Home on the Range. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Julia Stiles in The Prince and Me. The movie that spawned more sequels than you could possibly imagine. And then you probably wouldn't have known that if you haven't gone to a Walmart and see direct-to-video sequels for these, because they've made 3 different direct-to-video sequels with this film. Of course, they're not going to get Julia Stiles or the other guy in here. The guy that I don't even remember his name because he's so bland and forgettable, just like the movie. This film focuses on Paige Morgan, a pre-med college student in Wisconsin, played by Julia Stiles, who's pursued by a Danish prince posing as an ordinary college student. So it's basically a teeny version of Notting Hill, and not even a good one at that. But we all know what it's really ripping off, The Princess Diaries, because, Princess Diaries was a big hit for Disney. There's sequels coming out later in the year. Paramount said, "Hey, we got to cash in on this as well. Let's get Julia Stiles, who was just in the Bourne movies. She still looks like a teenager. We can make this work." And no, it really didn't work. Got a good director too, Martha Coolidge, who did Out to Sea, a movie I really liked. Valley Girl, introducing Dorothy Dandridge. Just a lot of fun films in general. And this is just one of those movies that you really expect more from it because of Julia Stiles. Julia Stiles usually is a director that really, just checking to make sure I got the name right here. But yeah, Julia Stiles is a really good actress. I mean, I think because she was already in the Bourne Identity before this, and we kind of figure that she's already kind of more of an adult in that film than she is in a movie like this. It takes away from the realism they're trying to set across from here. Plus, the guy that she's falling in love with, Luke Mabley as the Danish prince, is just so bland and so mediocre. Like, he is just a generic nice guy, and there's probably some people out there who thought that this became reality because Prince Harry ended up not Prince Harry. Why can't I remember his name now? Married Kate Middleton. I don't want to have to pause it, but I think I'm going to have to. Prince William. Good Lord. That's one of those ones I should know because I know Harry is married to Meghan Markle. I should have known who William was, but yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised if people, when Prince William got married to Kate Middleton, they thought, "Oh, this could happen. If it could happen in real life, it could happen to me because it happened in that movie too as well." And it's just yeah, it really is not that common for that to happen. And I mean, I don't know. This movie this is just a generic lame movie, and the fact that they actually had the balls to make direct-to-video sequels thinking that this had that big of a following to it, it was not even a big hit when it came out. I mean, it wasn't a flop, but it was mostly panned by critics. And this isn't like The Land Before Time, where you can keep making sequels and you still have an audience that can still watch those movies. I mean, look at how many Land Before Time sequels there are. 14 to be exact. It's getting to the point where I should do a Time About the Movie special just on the Land Before Time sequels. I've been thinking about doing it for a while now, but yeah, we've got all these Prince and Me movies, and it's just who is really watching these movies? I'm guessing they're going for the same target audience of the Hallmark Channel holiday movies, which I could never get into, honestly. Even as bad as they are, I could never really get into those movies, honestly. And this one I really couldn't get into either. Just a lackluster film, wasting a good actress in Julia Stiles in a generic film that... Just go watch Notting Hill. It's the much better movie version of this storyline. It's not watered down for teens. It's a generic film. It's not trying to rip off a better movie in The Princess Diaries. Though it might be better than Princess Diaries too, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the year. So that's The Prince and Me. So let's go ahead and wrap the show up on a fun high note by looking at our last movie, a criminally underrated movie from the same people that made Kung Fu Hustle, and that is Shaolin Soccer. So this is a movie directed by Stephen Chow, who would later go on to create Kung Fu Hustle, which actually does come out this year in the U.S. And actually I thought this film was actually released in 2003 in the U.S., even though this is technically a 2001 Hong Kong release. I thought it didn't hit America until 2003, so that's why I was kind of curious of why I didn't see it until I got to this point in the time frame here. But the story here is that you have a former Shaolin monk, who reunites his 5 brothers years after their master's death to apply their superhuman martial arts skills to play soccer and bring Shaolin Kung Fu to the masses. And as you see in the trailer there's definitely a lot of Kung Fu Hustle inspiration in there, especially with the Looney Tunes, the Looney Tunes style of slapstick comedy, which is really great in Kung Fu Hustle. And in this particular movie, it's also really fun to watch. The movie is very fun. It knows it's silly. It knows it's being ridiculous. It kind of reminds me of Kung Pao Enter the Fist, that movie where it was literally a parody of these type of films. It's just so goofy, so silly. The people who made this movie are completely in on the joke. And the movie is just absolutely hilarious. The visual perspective is great. The comedy is top-notch. It really is a film that I don't think gets the proper attention that it deserves, because it is a really incredible, fun movie, and one that I cannot recommend enough. If you love Kung Fu Hustle, you're going to love the hell out of Shaolin Soccer. I can't recommend this one enough. Definitely seek it out. Shaolin Soccer. And so with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll take a look at Easter weekend next with 5 more movies, including Cedric the Entertainer, Vanessa Williams, and Solange Knowles in Johnson Family Vacation. And we also have the big-budget spectacular failure that is The Alamo with Dennis Quaid and Billy Bob Thornton. Another colossal failure, Bruce Willis and Matthew Perry returning in the sequel to The Whole 9 Yards, The Whole 10 Yards. Anne Hathaway starring in the fantasy adventure Ella Enchanted, and Alicia Cuthbert and Emil Hirsch starring in The Girl Next Door. We'll take a look at those 5 movies all on the next episode, so be on the lookout for that. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I'm off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.